So we've got trust, clear direction, communication, clear training, empowering employees. Excellent. Right. Good remuneration package. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. But there's all sorts of things that feature in this. And fortunately, all those things I think I've got in my presentation. So we'll cover all those points. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what employees. So these are the, somebody else just joined in. So what I'm going to show you is what a Gallup survey in 2022 said about the things that employees thought were important. I'm going to deal with each of these sections in detail as we go through the presentation. But I think, because I hadn't really thought about this in a focused way for some time, and when I was preparing this presentation, what I thought was that it's the positive interaction between you and your staff based on clear understanding and self-awareness that makes for effective teams. There's a lot in that. I'm going to unpack it for you as we go over this presentation. But I'm just going to tell you a personal story at this point. Now, this is something that goes back a very long time. This was my 4-year-old son. We're just about to move house. And we had a viewer come to buy the house. And they brought a son with them who was very similar to my son's age. And they walked around, they had a look, they went into my son's bedroom, looked at all his things in his bedroom, his toys. And at the end of the meeting, at the end of the visit, they went away and they were very positive. And then my son disappeared. I didn't know where he went. Went into the bedroom, he was sitting there looking really grumpy. And I said to him, James, what's wrong? And he said, do you think that other boy will like all my toys? And I thought, do you know what? I've made assumptions about things he knows, and that's not right. You know, I didn't stand in somebody else's shoes. I didn't explain what was going to happen. I assumed he understood the process of selling the house. He's 4. And that really made me think about making assumptions and making sure the things you do have clear explanations and that people understand those things. Second story, I was working for a top 4 accountancy firm. Back about 20 years ago, and there was a specialist there who was really demotivated, and I thought I'd try and find out why that was. And she said she'd been given some work to do, but she didn't understand why she was doing it. So all I was able to do was to explain to her it was a larger piece of work. It was important for these reasons. And when she understood it, she actually looked at it and said, yeah, but I wouldn't do it this way, I'd do it a different way. And actually the way she suggested was far much better. That took about 10 minutes of the conversation. It made a big difference. So it's not always big things that make a difference. It's sometimes small things that can make a difference as well. I'm going to start with a little bit of theory here. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, you may have seen this pyramid. What it says is you need the things to support life, so the basic safety and security. After that, you need belonging. So you need to feel that you belong to some group of people. So obviously in a work context, that's very important. People have a sense of belonging. And then after you have that, get to the top of the pyramid, you get esteem, recognition of worth. And all those things, when they're in place, then people can start developing and growing as an employee. So it follows that any development of teams should be based on these principles. Looking at training and development for a minute. About 76% of employees looking for career growth opportunities, according to a Clear Company survey. 40% of employees who have experienced poor or no training are likely to leave the company within the first year of joining. And investing in training, according to Huffington Post, produces 24% higher profit margins. So there's lots of great reasons to think about these things. Well-being programs, which are really part of people planning. This is creating an environment to promote contentment, which allows your employees to flourish and achieve their full potential, benefits themselves and the organization. That is a Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development definition. They reckon employees are 8 times more likely to be engaged if you have some sort of plan around that. And the organization is likely to be more creative and to come up with better solutions to problems. And the organization's 4 times less likely to lose talent over the next year. That was from an Ashridge, Nuffield report, Management College, some time ago. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at some of these elements that we've got on this slide. Purpose, have a plan. So performance management, this is this Personnel Development Institute again. Performance management, staff induction and development are most effective when they help the job holder to understand what is expected of them and address any specific learning and development needs. So you might have a business plan, you might have a marketing plan, but have you got people elements in that plan? Most businesses have a business plan. CIPD found 50% of businesses don't have an employer wellbeing strategy. So we'll talk about the strategy in a minute. They have 7 elements the CIPD identified. So they were health, quality of work, values and principles being one, collective and social being another, personal growth, good lifestyle choices, and financial well-being. When you think, according to the CIPD again, 32.5 million working days were lost to employee illness in 2019 and 2020, 40% of that was stress, anxiety, and depression, then this is something that's really important. I'll come back to that later. I'll talk a bit more about that. Later slide. Clear communication. Over the years, I've read loads of CVs and met loads of people, and they all say they're great communicators. And within 5 minutes of meeting them, it's very clear they're not, either verbally or in writing. So people don't always understand what communication is or what clarity of communication is. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about that over the next few slides. But it's no good. You can have the greatest plan in the world, but if you don't communicate it to people, it's not going to work. How does the work of that person, I remember bringing the example of the person in the accountancy firm I worked for, she did understand she was doing, supported the rest of the people in that organization. When she did, she was able to suggest improvements. So her working style supports colleagues and the entire organization. Do people understand that? Do they understand what they're doing and how that furthers the aims and objectives of the entire organization? And avoid jargon, please. I mean, everybody gets into a little language void where they think they understand everything, all the jargon, all the terms they use. Not everybody will. And all you've got to do is go on the internet to see some really terrible job descriptions and really terrible use of jargon. Plain English, simple as possible, and then there's no room for misunderstanding about what is actually required. So looking back at what you need to develop in a people plan, define roles and responsibilities. Everybody should have a defined role, set of responsibilities. This helps people stay focused and accountable. Make sure you've got goals and objectives. I'll talk about setting goals and objectives later. But actually, I've seen loads of goals and objectives set in performance agreements previously, where people weren't actually clear what the objectives were or how to measure them. So there's no point in having a target that's so vague nobody knows whether they've met it or not. Communication plan, so effective communication is essential. We've talked about communication, we'll come back to that later. And a positive culture, so you're working for a positive, supportive culture where you have open communication and respect, creates a great working environment for everybody, and invest in training and development. So this shows that you're committed to success of your team and helping them to grow professionally. And remember the statistic, about 74% of people are looking for opportunities to grow, become successful. So that is the, I'll get onto working styles and psychometrics a bit later on, cover that. But first of all, just a few things for job description and performance management documents. So job descriptions set out the duties, responsibilities of both the employer and the employee. It should say the skills that are needed to deliver the requirements of the role, or how they would be helped to develop those roles. It will look at any experience you need in that role. It will look at the qualifications you need, or the help you might give somebody to gain those qualifications. And it will look at behaviors, or what people now call competencies. So there's quite a lot of things to put in, but they can be very, very clear, and you can get that on the side of A4. I've seen them run 7 or 8 pages, and particularly ones written by teachers seem to be massively over-engineered. So make it simple, make sure everybody understands it. It's all down to clear communication. So we're going to the next element now, development, which is the second element that people thought was important in their developing as individuals within an organisation. It's a quote from Henry Ford. The only thing that's worse than training your employees and having them leave is not training them and having them to stay. So training is a great investment. I know a lot of people say, oh, we don't have time, we can't do it at the moment. But if you don't, you've got untrained people in your organisation. And as Henry Ford said, that's worse than training them and having them leave. So the importance of development is that you align individual development with your organizational objectives and values. So you stop saying, we do this because these are our values. If you're developing people, observational feedback is great. So you say to somebody, I noticed that you did this, or I noticed that you did that. I was wondering why you did that. I was wondering why you did it in that way. It's important to understand that, have those conversations, try and understand people's motivation for doing something. But general feedback is not very effective if you've got a very specific example of something somebody did. And if you noticed what the impact of that was, that can make a really big difference for the person you're talking to. I'll talk about SMART objectives in a minute. I mentioned that sometimes people agree plans and don't know what the objectives are. But what I've also seen is people have loads and loads of objectives and they just get overwhelmed with them. So my advice is to pick 2 or 3 really important ones, do those, following year, move on to some more. Growth mindset is something that's mentioned a lot. And actually it's about employer and employees having a growth mindset, really. Now, the alternative to growth mindset is a fixed mindset, and growth mindset's people not afraid of failing. They will try things because they know the organization will support them, and that people will learn from doing things incorrectly more than they will from getting the things right in the first place. I think a lot of trainers say fail means first attempt in learning. So but a growth mindset means that people's abilities are not fixed. They can be improved through effort, learning, persistence. And so it's about attitude. But I like to think of it as in those cartoons where you have the devil and the angel sitting on your shoulder. And somebody saying, oh, let's do this project. Oh, no, it might not work. It might not, we might not work. It might embarrass ourselves. We might do this. We might do that. It might not, we might not fail. We might not succeed. The growth mindset is saying, well, yeah, maybe I don't know how to do everything at the moment, but I'm sure I can learn, and I'm sure with the team support we can get to where we need to be. So that's the sort of difference in the mindset. And again, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube you can look at on that. I can send some links out later to some of the things I think are quite good. But it really is about how a person faces challenges, how they process failures, and how they can adapt and resolve and evolve as a result. So that is a great thing to do. The other thing with I know Mary, who's on the call, is a specialist in work in the voluntary sector, and volunteering develops skills and builds teamwork and empathy, all those things. So I've got a sometimes employees may benefit from support from a local charity. They may pick to support that charity as a within the workplace. And say it develops skills. Some people do volunteering days, things like that. They can be very effective. I don't know whether you'd like to add anything to that, Mary, if you're on mute at the moment. But,
yeah, no, sorry, I was just unmuting. No, thanks for that, Rob. I think you've summed it up quite well. I think it's a great way to engage with a different group of people, because actually you can get stuck within your organisation with the demographic of people that you work with, but actually to go out and volunteer, and particularly for junior people who may not be able to get that management experience within the organisation, if they go and volunteer, it just gives them that extra experience. I certainly remember in our local riding club, last took over as the chair, and wow, it she was very wobbly to start with, but to see her grow over the 6 months, and she needed it for work. And her organisation said, go and volunteer. She dived in at the deep end and said, yes, I'll be chair of this committee, which was like herding cats. But by the end of 6 months a year, she was ready for promotion within work. So, yeah, happy to talk to anybody about volunteering.
Thank you, Mary. What I'm going to do now very briefly is show you there's a very over-engineered example of a performance improvement plan on the Cambridge University website. I suppose you'd expect it to be over-engineered given it's Cambridge University. But what I did is I took the essence of it and put it into a single page, really. And this can be used for a training plan or performance appraisal or improvement. So you can take off columns depending on what you need to use with it for. But it's really just identifying the target area, the skill you want to develop or the behavior you want to develop. Is there a performance concern? Take that out if there's not. What does good look like? Teachers call this a waggle, what a good one looks like. So what is it? What does it look like when you've succeeded? What does it look like when you've produced this thing that is, to the standard you want it to be? What actions do we need to do to get you to meet or exceed that expectation? And importantly, what support are we going to agree to do that? When are we going to give you that support? And we're going to monitor it as well, because I think I've been on loads of training courses over the years where I did the course, I made loads of notes, I went back to the office and I forgot all about it. And it's really taking those things away and working with them, because I've got folders full of stuff that I haven't looked at ever since. And maybe every now and again I'll pull something out, but it's about making sure that once you've agreed something, you follow it through, because it doesn't happen very often. The other thing, certainly in the public sector, became quite an industry in people and performance, and people would spend weeks and weeks gathering evidence to demonstrate how good they were. And that meant they'd spent 2 or 3 weeks not working on company business or getting stuff done. So it's about proportion, it's about getting it right. It's about not overburdening people, creating all this evidence of things they've done, because really, you should know that. You should know what they're doing last week. And I think that's very important about interactions. I'll say a bit more about that coming up. These are SMART objectives. So we talked about there's no point in having objectives if people don't know how you're going to measure them or assess them. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. They're not set in stone. You can revise them, but you should revise them regularly. Things change, businesses change, businesses are dynamic. So you're not going to have a single set of objectives that stay the same, maybe month for month, let alone year to year. Sometimes you may want to focus on an outcome, sometimes you may focus on a behavior, so a specific result, tangible result, or change in the way you do something. And if you're going to include a training activity, then specify what the training activity is and when it'll be completed. And then also look at how you're going to evaluate that progress against the objectives. Area managers. This was another one of the categories that was in that first slide I showed you way back. I've had loads of managers who bought me cakes every Friday, but they weren't necessarily great managers. So, although it does help, obviously. But I think the first point I make of this is you earn respect doesn't automatically come with status or position in the organization. The next point is be self-aware, understand your own working style. And I'll say a little bit about psychometrics here. So there are a range of psychometric profiling tools. And one I've used a lot is Insights, which has, I don't know whether you can see these bricks, red bricks. So Insights works on 4 colors of working style, if you like. So the blue one, this one says, give me details. This is somebody who loves detail, loves analysis. The red one, be brief, be bright, be gone. I've got a yellow one, that says involve me. It's a green one, that says show me you care. So people will have working styles made up of combinations of those colors. And it's great if you can do something like this because it helps you understand the working styles of people in your organization. And if you get too much imbalance, then things can go wrong. So, for example, the blue people on a on a good day, they're going to be objective, detached, analytical. They're going to be unbiased. They're going to be very, very maybe critical. But on a bad day, they can be stuffy, indecisive, cold, reserved. Yeah. So there's two sides to that. You need somebody with detail, but you've got to be careful how far you go with the detail. The red people, so the blue and reds are task focused. They want to get things really done straight away. Once the blue person will do once he's got the detail. The red person doesn't really care about the detail. They just want to get to the end result. So red energy, let's do it now. That's great. That's positive, affirmative, assertive. But on a bad day, that could be aggressive, controlling. It could be overbearing. It could be intolerant. So when you're building a team, it's always good to understand your preferred working style and other people's preferred working styles. And the other point about that is that people will have a preferred mix which can change. It changes most when people are stressed, and it might bring out elements that are not normally visible. So this comes back to well-being and understanding people's preferred styles. The other thing is about flexing your style. So if you're a manager and you know that you've got a certain style or your preference is a certain style, particularly when you're stressed, it's a great idea to flex your style to get the best out of other people. So I'll give you an example of that. When I went into school, I'd been working in a very long project which involved litigation on European law, and that required a load of detail. So my sort of blue bladder was through the roof. So had I started with the story when I was cut off, or was it?
You'd literally just about to.
Okay, so I'd been working in a thing which involved litigation on European dividends, and whether they were legal or the UK approach them was legal or illegal. And so that meant I was deeply analytical at that point. I got into a school and I realized that they didn't want deep analysis. What they wanted was somebody to go in to see the head and say, here's 3 bullet points about why we should do this. Do you agree? And he'd say yes. So what I realized was that if I went into him and gave him half an hour about why we should do this, he wasn't going to be interested. So what I did was I flexed my style, changed it so that I got the best out of that person. There were other people in the school who wanted the detail, but you do get to know, how people react to those things. Here's another model the attitude you want to see. I've seen loads of managers where they've been on the phone to somebody, they get off the phone, they express opinions about somebody that are not great, either in the organization or outside the organization, in front of other people. Whereas you're talking about respect and values, and that's entirely inconsistent with that. So people need to be careful about that, because even when you don't realize it, you're actually on view. Probably a little bit less now. A lot of people work from home, but nevertheless, it's, if you're in an office, it can be a problem. Even working at home, it can be a problem. Having a development conversation with somebody, it's not always an easy thing to talk about, because people sometimes are very reluctant to have those conversations. But identifying and understanding common ground helps. So align the objectives with the organization. Say, I want you to develop in this way because this will help you, but it will also help us. And everybody's going to win out of this. And learn to delegate. As your business grows, people want to succeed, and some people are afraid if they delegate, somebody else won't get the job done correctly. And what I've found over the years is that when managers juggle priorities at the same time, they're more likely to make mistakes. So if you learn to delegate, it's an art form. It helps create trust, open communication. It also helps develop the skills in your team because you've allocated tasks to them and entrust them to do that. And it creates a positive culture. The other thing to be careful about with delegation, though, is that it's not a way of getting rid of all the things you don't fancy doing yourself. And if you've delegated it, please don't micromanage it, because what you then get is you're saying to somebody, well, I want you to do this, but I don't trust you, so I'm going to be on your case every 5 minutes asking you to explain it all to me. So remember, delegation is not abdication. Looking at next point I've got here, which I'll just bring up. Difficult conversations. Now, a lot of people have decided on a solution before they start the conversation. They'll have talked to someone, they'll have decided there's an issue, they've decided what they want to do about it. They then invite somebody to have a conversation, but they've already actually got to stage 3 of the conversation. Haven't set the scene. They haven't got the other person's perspective. So the really important thing in difficult conversations is identifying common areas of ground, common areas of mutual benefit, because people can miss out that exploratory phase, why things you can benefit from this conversation. Go straight into solution mode, which is then dictated rather than arrived at by a consensus. And I've got this yes and yes, but. How many times have you made a suggestion to somebody and they've said, yes, but we can't do this because we can't do it because of that, we can't do it because of that? How many people say yes and yes, we could do that, and we could also think about this, and we could also do it this way, and what do you think about doing, So it's a difference in attitude, and it's a difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. So it comes back to that point again. And just listen to how many people, when you have conversations with them about ideas, they'll say, yes, but, and it's the but is the thing to try and avoid. I catch myself doing it, and it's a hard habit to get over. Right. So I mentioned earlier on that the well-being plan, and these are the 7 elements that the CIPD identified in a well-being plan. Now, I think it's a great organization. You become an associate member of it, and you have to pay for that. But you can access resources even if you don't sign up as a member. And some really great free resources around people planning, mental health awareness, or pretty much anything you need in the HR sector is going to be on their website. And most of it you can access for free. They're a recognised representative body, professional body. They accredit people as members. So they've got a lot of expertise, and there's a great resource. So that's a really good thing if you're not members of that as well, or haven't looked at the website. It's a really good thing to look at. And the elements, your health includes physical health and mental health. Mentioned earlier on, 40% of illness days now are due to mental health issues rather than physical health. But there's also the safety elements there, the safe environment. Quality work, well, that's down to environment. It's down to management. We've already talked a lot about management styles. It's work demands. It's about pay, reward. People mentioned earlier when we asked what they thought the elements of successful team were. Values and principles. I went to a session recently, and the presenter was saying that different people at different age ranges have very, very different values. And we have to take those into account when you're thinking about a team, because somebody who's my age may have a very different worldview to somebody who's 20. What drives young people? If you want young people in your team, have you got an offer that appeals to them? Or are you writing it to appeal to you and you're 20 years older than that person and it's not going to work? So they're Generation Z, Generation X, all those other things. What are the values and principles? And what we find is that the newer, younger generations now think about ethical standards, quality, diversity, inclusion, corporate social responsibility, sustainability. They're all increasingly things that people are interested in. And it's also something that tie into volunteering if you look at that. So an area for development. Then collective and social, that will include employee voice, positive relationships, personal growth, and personal development, emotional development, giving people the space to learn and develop. Lifestyle choices, well, encourage things maybe like physical activity, encouraging people to get away from their desk for half an hour every day. Maybe doing things that involve being active, and things like healthy eating, gym memberships, things like that might be useful for that sort of thing. Financial well-being includes pay benefits, employee financial support. If you can offer that, season ticket loans, things like that can be quite useful. And retirement and succession planning as well is another element of that. So just conversations, frequency. So I've been managed by people over the years where I went into a formal appraisal, and what they said was a big surprise to me. In some cases, it turned out they didn't actually know what I was doing, and as a result, they didn't understand it. I left that organization, So it goes back to the point about having constructive conversations. The manager didn't have a clue what I was doing. She didn't understand things I was working on. But it shouldn't be a surprise if you get 6 months into a year and you say to somebody, "I don't think what you're doing is any good," or I think there are problems with the way you're performing. That's far too late. It's far too late. Because they don't know. They haven't been told. So people shouldn't be surprised in any formal appraisal process. Active listening. I'll say a bit more about active listening now, but just illustrate this by, if you go out and you're down in a pub or a cafe and you're in a group of people and somebody's telling you a story, what you're thinking maybe sometimes is, oh, how can I top that story? How would it affect me? What happens there? And that's a sort of first level of listening, because what you're doing is you're not really engaged, you're not present in the conversation, you're just thinking ahead what you might say in response to that conversation. So active listening is really about checking understanding and getting back to somebody what you think they just said to you. Because quite often, a week later, somebody will say to you, "Well, I didn't think that's what we agreed," or I didn't mean to say that, or that wasn't my understanding of what happened. So I think it's really quite important to have, in any conversation you have with people, check understanding, summarize what you think you've been told, ask them to summarize what they think they've been told, and then you know where you are. Researchers identify, some identify 7 or 8 levels of listening, but there are really 3. So the first one we talked about, internal listening, where we're focusing on ourselves, our experience and opinions in relation to what's being said. Level 2, focused listening, where you're actually starting actively listening to that other person. We're not planning ahead for that conversation, we're in the moment, but our curiosity can be there. We're interested in what that person's saying, and we're showing that. And then level 3 is when you start thinking about body language, inflections, tone of voice, pauses, hesitations. So you really begin to understand, because most communication is not verbal, it's non-verbal. People's body language, people's intonation tells you a lot more, but certainly as much as what people are actually saying. Sometimes there's quite a dissonance between the two things. GROW model, I'll come on to the GROW model in a minute, I'll explain that to you. And clarity over outcome, we've already talked about that. So this is the GROW model. How many meetings have you had where you weren't clear the outcome of the conclusion? Well, you might have been very lucky if you haven't had any, but this is a way of actually capturing it. So having a conversation with somebody, with your team, you can work on a team basis, work on an individual basis. Got a goal. What do we want to achieve? What is the reality? Where are we at the moment? What are the constraints? What are the things? What are the options? What are the options, the O in the GROW? What choices could we make? Having got to that, you say, what is the way ahead? What are the action we're going to take? How are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? And that's a GROW model. I find it's a simple and effective way of structuring conversation. There's quite a lot of online material about it again. And I found it even works for very reluctant teenagers who are about to go to university. So I would recommend that to you. It's an interesting, very simple model, and people can grasp it very quickly, so they can understand the structure. It's a very clear process. Focusing on strengths, accentuate the positive. This is linking back to the growth mindset and the Maslow principle of self-actualization. So creating a positive environment for people to work in, noticing things that they do that are positive. Opportunities for growth, improvement, growth, understanding what's worked well. Have you actually recognized the strengths in your team? Do you know what they are? What was it that employee did that contributed to a successful outcome? What did you see them doing that was really good or really helped you get where you wanted to be? Use that in a different context. Expand on it, build it, apply in other areas of work. Talked about psychometrics earlier on. You can use that to identify skill sets in teams and to balance teams. This also helps managing with self-understanding, self-awareness, because you've then got interactions. And there's a phrase that a lot of trainers use when they're talking about building teams. They talk about form, storm, norm, form. You get a team, put it together. There's a bit of storming to start because people are still trying to understand each other, work through the relationships. Then you get to a normal level. And then after you get to norm, you get to perform, which is where the real benefits come, but it can be a difficult process. So creating that environment that culture within which you get through those stages quickly. Really important. Focusing on the strengths. Just go on to, let's have another bit of interaction, because you're probably fed up with hearing me going on about things for 30 minutes at a time. So, skill gaps are in your business. Things getting worse or better? What impact is this having on your business? Throw some ideas into the chat box, see what comes up. I'll just have a sip of water while we get the message coming in. Okay, there we are. Right, I'm back again. So we've got some comments coming in now. People saying it's hard to find people who work to their standards, and it's impacting your business to train them yourself. And people find it hard to have difficult conversations or to give feedback. Yes, absolutely. So we've mentioned that technique about maybe finding common ground. The other thing with feedback is you try and give something positive to start, then you maybe deal with the stuff that's not so great in the middle, and then you try and find something positive at the end. So there's, but what we've done as a Bucks Business First, we just published a local skills improvement plan, and that's available on our website. And that looks at the Bucks Business First employer representative body for Buckinghamshire. So they looked at the views of employers operating within an area, and they took evidence, summarised skills, capability, and expertise that may be required in or will be required in the future. And they made a series of recommendations in specific sectors. But what they've also done is they've talked about work-ready skills, and some of the things I'm seeing in the chat box, time management skills, for example, looking at those sort of work-ready skills. So there's things like, well, collaboration leadership is the first category they identified in the report. That was about communication, attitudes to working. Sorry, there were 5 areas: communication leadership, collaboration leadership, communication, attitudes to work, digital literacy, and practical skills. Leadership is teamwork and problem solving, critical thinking, things like that. Communication, written, verbal, the ability to organize thoughts, the ability to write an email that doesn't read like a text to your mates. Understanding the plan instructions. They're the things that we think people sometimes lack. Attitudes, attendance, punctuality, courtesy, respect, understand the workplace. Digital literacy starts with a basic familiarity with software and computer systems, being safe online, things like that. And then practical skills about using equipment safely, tools and equipment safely, working efficiently to a quality standard. And I think that's one of them. I think Emma said that she was finding it difficult to find people who met their quality standards at the moment. I know my colleague Mary has a workshop coming up which talks about recruiting, so I'll tell you about that a bit later on. 45% of establishments have provided training over the past 12 months, so they'd like to provide more training arranged. The main barriers are not being able to spare time, lacking funds, and a lot of the training that was done was actually the mandatory stuff. So this was a government training and development survey, and a lot of the training was health and safety, first aid training, GDPR, things like that. So have to do those, but there's other stuff that needs to be done as well, and it's all about investing in people, because people is one of the biggest assets. The cost of people, it's a phenomenal part of your business overheads. Digital skills means absolute basic digital skills. You can get courses, Buckinghamshire Adult Learning, for example, who offer level 1, level 2, which is a GCSE level 1, or even intermediate for people who are really not confident with doing those things. We've done a survey. We found that digital skills are a really big issue for a lot of employers. And slide, I've mentioned the barriers to training. So the problem is some younger people thought it was a bit too much like school, a training program. They don't want to feel like going back to school. They want to be given a bit more freedom, a bit more autonomy. So some things there to think about, and we can help you with a range of these things. So this is something I copied from someone else, and it's credited at the bottom of the slide. What skills do you need your employees? What skills do your employees need to make your business succeed? So you're looking at where you are, where you want to be, and what the stages to get there are. Do your employees have those skills? Sometimes you assume they don't. Look inside first. I've had conversations where people have said, I didn't know you could do that. I say, well, you never asked me. I've been in very, very detailed, expensive negotiations where people said, I didn't know you could offer us that. And they said, you never asked. Yeah. And it's 4 hours and people skirting around the issue before they got to that stage. So asking questions. We've already mentioned psychometric self-awareness as an effective tool for building teams. Buddying is a really good idea as well. You can actually match up people as buddies, can work for welfare, but can also work for understanding somebody else's role in an organization. It's a really good way of doing that. Have somebody matched up, share skills, share ideas, share learning. Maybe if you send somebody off for formal training, ask them to deliver a short session at some point, talking about their jobs or what they learned from the course. It's a great way of capturing what was learned on the course, because otherwise it goes in a folder, goes on the shelf, stays there. This one is it's called COM-B model. It's used in health services a lot. I came across it fairly recently. But what this is about is capability, opportunity, and motivation, the three elements that can lead to behavioral change. So the C is capability, the O, opportunity, and motivation, and the B is the behavior. So if you're looking to change behavior, then there's a few questions to consider. And that is whether the person on the team has the knowledge, skills, and ability to engage in that behavior. So, it's mental state, knowledge, things like that. Make an individual feel capable of performing that. Maybe you need some training, maybe you need a cultural change, maybe you need to look at growth mindset. What opportunity does that person have to practice those things, those skills? What opportunities do they have to put those skills into practice? So free training classes, peer support sessions could help with that. Motivation, going back to Maslow here. So the motivation context of this COM-B model refers to processes that influence decision-making and behavior. So there's reflective and automatic. So the automatic stuff is the Pavlovian stuff. People react to something. You ring a bell, you get a steak, the dogs. What you're trying to do is to get to reflective behavior. So people have reflected on what they've done, and they've actually learned from that. They've learned lessons from reflecting on what they've done. And when you've got that desire to do something because they can see the benefit, that's when you will successfully change behavior. I can send stuff out about this as well if anybody wants the link to the website links. So just to summarize, I think we've got about 10 minutes left, so we're pretty much on time. What I would say here is the key points. There may be others as well, but these were the ones that I thought were really important. So clear and frequent communication, explain the purpose and the expected outcome, check understanding, stand in the employee's shoes, think about your structured training, support and interventions, think about your planning, and monitor and evaluate the impact of what you do, because otherwise you don't know whether it's being worthwhile. So BBF offer a wide range of workshops free. They're all on our website page. I'd particularly like to mention the Trying to Recruit workshop that my colleague Mary is delivering next week and over the course of the next few months, and also the apprenticeship, the Mystifying Apprenticeship workshop that my other colleague John Browning is delivering in September and October as well. So there's loads of other things on there. Some are BBF, others are different organisations. Most of them are free, some are paid, but it's always worth having a look on the events page on there to see what is actually available. Keep scrolling, keep pressing loading more. I think it takes you now right through to the end of December. Would you like to say something else about your recruitment workshop, Mary? Just a brief 30 seconds on that.
No, we've it's running on Monday at 10 o'clock, I think, Meg, and it's just a great way to look at are you doing all you possibly can to recruit staff, and perhaps just give you a few nudges on things you might not have thought of. Obviously, I'm always keen to get your feedback on what you've tried, what works, what doesn't work, and give you some pointers as to where you might go to find some people. And had some super conversations with some businesses recently about how they've been trying to solve the recruitment problem. And Emma, I noticed your point about the difficulty of getting bathroom installers, and just might be an idea worth chatting through with you there that came from speaking with another business. So look forward to seeing. There's plenty of space on Monday for anybody that still might want to book in.
Oh, no, so you, is Emma again? First apprentice started this week, Emma. So that's great.
That's brilliant.
News. And was that the one that came from Build an Ambition?
Yeah, it was.
Oh,
yeah,
brilliant.
Peter met
Excellent.
him when he was just running some dummy interviews for you. Yeah.
Yes, I was at that session in Bucks College. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
What a wonderful outcome. I'm so pleased to hear that.
Yeah.
Great. Brilliant.
It'll be popping up on social media soon.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. So just to give you an idea of a wider range of stuff that Bucks Business First can actually offer. A lot of stuff here we can offer. There's mentoring programs. When the email goes out to you, there'll be links to 2 of those, Peer Engage and MD Engage. So if people want to deep dive into development as managers, that's a really good place to start looking. We have a range of grants and funding available from time to time. We're looking at low carbon programs, can help with workforce skills and development, mentoring. Just pretty much have a word with us, and if we can't answer it, we'll find somebody who can help you. And there's a community of members, about 14,000 members of Bucks Business First now. So somebody out there will know an answer, be able to help you, be able to offer the service you're looking for. And lots of things that not member organizations where we can direct you as well. So please make use of what we offer, because there's a lot of stuff. I know a lot of you have done that, because I had a look at what you've done before I did this call. And I know people have been involved in mentoring, they've been involved in our growth program. We've got some nominees for the Bucks Business Awards. So there's a lot of different engagement going on there. But please, please take advantage of what we offer, because we're here to help you. We want to see you prosper and grow. So please, pick up the phone, send us a message, and we can do all that for you. So please do take advantage of everything we can offer for you. There's some useful resources. It'll be in the slide deck when it goes out. So I mentioned the CIPD Multiplier is a program that helps with literacy and numeracy. It's free for most people, but there are some conditions attached to that. Digital skills, Google Digital Garage, Microsoft do a great range of things. Barclays Life Skills is really good for helping individuals develop skills like being assertive, like understanding some of the psychometric ideas we talked about earlier on. Accenture offer a load of digital skills training, and then there's Future Learn for people who want to dive into more detail on technical subjects. So I already said you could ask your team members to deliver short skills sessions, training, talking about their jobs. So all sorts of ideas there for you. That's me then. Thank you very much. Here are my contact details. Here are Mary's contact details, and contact details of John, who's the workforce skills manager, who was the leader on the local skills improvement plan. So if we can help you in any way, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate you joining the session, and I hope you found some things useful in that. If anybody got any more questions, that'd be great. I think, Emma, we thought we could just have a couple of extra minutes if you wanted to do that at the moment, just to pick up on some points you mentioned earlier on.
Yeah, I'm free to stay around. Okay,
but for everybody else, then, thank you very much. That's the end of the session. Any questions you've got, please do get in touch with me, and we're very happy, all my colleagues, very happy to help you. We'd love to work with you on making things successful for you. So thank you very much.